ladies and gentlemen, the writer-director of this, Mr. Mike Cahill. And from the Telegraph, Robbie Collins. How's everybody doing?
Thanks all for sticking around for this Q&A. It's a kind of film that you come out of with, with a million and one questions buzzing around in my head. But let's start off, I think, by talking about that post-credits sting, which is teasing a film that doesn't exist, that could be a sequel, but in actual fact it always did exist, because this film was almost that film. Right? You can always say that.
Right. Hi everybody, it's so nice to be here. Thanks for doing this. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for staying. This whole house is still here. If anyone has to go somewhere, I won't be offended. But it's really nice that you stayed. Right, so the idea, originally after Another Earth, I had written a script called I, just the letter I. And it takes place in the future. That sort of last scene, that little button, is where that I begins. And as I was, and Fox Searchlight bought that a couple years ago, the script, and as we were figuring out how to make that movie, I had this extensive backstory written, this origin story to I. And I had met Michael Pitt in Brooklyn, sort of on this general meeting. We're both at the same agency. And neither of us had an agenda. We were just, I had admired him as an artist, and the opportunity to meet was there, and so I jumped at the chance, and we were talking for several hours, and I thought of this origin story about this doctor and his obsession with eyes and Sophie and the whole story, and I just kind of casually told him the story, and he said, we should make that. And so I wrote a script in 2 weeks for the origin story, and then I sent it to Michael, and he was like, let's do this. And then I asked Fox for permission, basically, to make this story. And that's why it has sort of an unusual title, because I'm very literal. Like, Another Earth is about another Earth, and this is the origins to I, and Boxer and Ballerina is about Boxer and Ballerina.
And do you still plan to make that?
It would be great to make that, yeah. That's one of the few things in the pipeline right now.
I think people are generally aware of the fact that our irises are all totally unique, and it's only, I think, certainly for me, when you see it on a screen this big, that you get a feeling for just how kind of intricate and incredible they are. And certainly since I saw the film, I've been looking at my son's eyes, really kind of peering, thinking, is this Hitler back from the dead? Were you interested in eyes before you started working on the project, or was this something that just kind of came along with the story?
Well, there's a little moment, it's sort of like a nod in the script, or in the film, where Ian is sitting in this cafe in Brooklyn, and on the walls of this National Geographic photograph that says "Found." And that story, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the story of the famous Afghan girl on the June 1985 cover of National Geographic. It's an iconic photograph. She has these very striking green eyes. And the story behind that was interesting. Steve McCurry was the photographer, and he took that photograph of this girl in a refugee camp, and off she went to go run and play with her friends. And he didn't know who she was, what her name was, and later that photograph became very famous. And every day he would get letters to Geographic. I used to work at Geographic too, so making like sharp movies. Anyways, he would get letters every day being like, who's this girl? And so 17 years later, they mounted this expedition to try and find her, all grown up. And this is when I learned about iris biometrics, because the way they found her is through the eyes. They brought scientists who, got a print from the photograph, and then they would scan different people's eyes. And then I started thinking about that. It was very inspirational to find someone through their eyes.
When you were casting the film, and trying to find the actress to play Sophie, who's so terrific in the role, did you put out on the casting call, she must have incredibly unusual eyes? I mean, was that something you thought about doing with perhaps contacts, or other?
Oh, well, yeah, so there was it's funny, because when you're making a movie, there's a lot of trial and error that goes into it. Like, I remember, in the script it said she has these iconic sectoral heterochromatic eyes, which means like eyes with more than one color in them. And you know, I was really just seeking an actress who could embody the role, you know, who could act brilliantly as this person, and figured we'd figure out the eyes eventually. And I remember we tried all these things. We tried contact lenses actually, like there's a place called hand-painted contact lenses in New York City. .com, and they look so bad. I mean, they're the business is great business.
It was just not.
But it looked so, and I was thinking like, this would look so ridiculous because you can, if you see it on the big screen, contacts look like contacts, and they look so fake. And so we couldn't approach it that way. So then I was thinking, well, maybe we'll have to do a digital effect. But the challenge with that is, if anyone's in visual effects, creating digital eyes, they know that creating digital eyes is you enter into this terrain called the uncanny valley, which is, you know, we have like a repulsion, we humans, we're all humans, have a repulsion to fake eyes that are almost real. And even if they're 99.9% real, we still kind of feel weird about it. Like if you've ever seen Polar Express, you know how the it kind of feels a little freaky. But so what we did to overcome that is instead of creating digital eyes, it was very, very difficult to do, but so like the little girl, Cahill, she doesn't have those eyes. So we filmed Astrid in all the same lighting conditions, and then we literally rotoscoped, like cut out Astrid's eyes and paste them into the little girl's eyes, frame by frame for 200 something shots.
It's incredible because when you see the film, I imagined this kind of pan-India search for someone with exactly the same eyes. That just didn't happen. It was just totally complicated.
No, she actually did have the same eyes. I'm just kidding.
One of the kind of interesting things I've not seen crop up in any other film before is this argument that there are certain things in the world that are just too biologically complicated to have arisen through evolution. And it's something if you study philosophy, it's something that crops up there, but it's not really, I don't think, a widely known argument in popular culture. Where did you first hear that? And I'm assuming that was long before you started working on the film, right? And then just kind of the connection was made from when you started on this.
Well, in Darwin's On the Origin of Species, this is sort of an oft-quoted quote where he says, Darwin, evolution, natural selection. He was describing the mechanism of natural selection and how we evolve. And then there's this one line where he says, he's talking about the human eye. He says, suppose that the eye was formed by natural selection, I freely confess, is absurd in the highest degree. And then he goes on to say, but I do believe it must have evolved, or whatever. But it's been often misquoted as saying even Darwin said the eye couldn't evolve. And it's been used in sort of arguments of irreducible complexity or proof of God that if you cannot, the eye has so many parts that if you took one away, it ceases to have a function, and therefore it could not have evolved. And so, this sort of thinking or theory has been debunked by someone like Richard Dawkins in the 80s, but theoretically, I mean, it's not until today, really, or recently in the last 5, 6, 7 years that we've had the technology to actually create these species and perfect examples of every stage of evolution. How's everyone feeling? How are you doing? Are we getting any questions from the crowd?
Yeah, we'll do some questions from the floor. Does anyone have anything they'd like to ask? Just stick your hand up. We've got some roving mics around. Yeah, there, right in the middle of the front.
All right, first question. How are you? What's your name?
Hi, I'm Simon. I don't know if I'm being really stupid, but what was with the 11? There was a moment when there's several.
You're not stupid at all. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I just wanted to.
So the question's like
the 11 one. Yeah.
What is it called?
By the way, I love the film.
Oh, thanks, man. Oh, yeah, awesome. That's awesome. Thanks. But what's up with that 11 scene? No, so the 11 scene. There's a writing thing that I like to do, and I like when I'm trying to achieve something in a scene. I throw the opposite wrench at the character, if you will. So, like for example, and to see how they deal with it, right? So, before talking about the 11s, if you think about the scene, later, about 2/3 of the way through the film, I wanted to establish Ian and Karen's love. And you could show a couple holding hands walking around the beach and nice music and making jokes, but instead I have him masturbating to his ex-love and she walks around. It's like the worst situation in the world. And yet, them making it through that scene in the way that they do, in the manner that they do, you feel that their love is stronger than anyone's, or it's more complex and it can handle something is like that. And you see this sort of subtlety of Britt's performance as Karen, as someone who is wounded and vulnerable, but has a sort of different priority system, and that all comes on display because of the construction of the scene. So when this might sound all abstract, I don't know if it makes any sense, but the 11 scene, I wanted to. It takes place early on in the film, and we wanted to establish Ian as this rational, atheistic sort of scientist, the last person in the world who would believe in magic or numerology or any sort of hocus pocus kind of thing. So of course, what I do is I throw it right at him, right in the beginning, and 95%, and this is like to sort of add shading to his character, because 95% of him resists, 5% of him gets on the bus, and later he makes up, he rationalizes saying, well, life on Earth was formed by this great coincidence, and it's like he like tries to make it okay scientifically to deal with coincidences, but that is almost like a thread on a jacket that Sophie sees, and she starts to unravel him through that. She sees that he is open to the possibility. So that's sort of the thinking behind that scene.
When you write,
does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
When you write those kind of character moments that aren't totally expected, trophy fictional stuff, the bit with Karen and the computer, or also in another arc, there's this incredible Robert Marley's character. She makes lots of Thomas Mather's character, and she's sick on the train on the way home.
Thomas Mather is Tom Cruise, man. William Mather.
Yeah, that's right, William.
Okay. That is already there.
Okay, so those kind of unusual but totally plausible in retrospect characters. I mean, is that something that you've taken out of making documentaries or something? I mean, not the short documentaries, but you did like Boxes Ballerines and things like that. Does that feed into kind of wanting to get kind of a true kind of emotional purchase?
Well, the thing about documentaries, I guess, the thing that you take away and learn from documentaries is if you're making documentaries about people, you observe humans very closely, and you realize what's interesting is humans, their reactions to things are not cliche, they're sort of unusual. Like sometimes we laugh when we should be shocked, or like if we see something, or sometimes we cry when we're overjoyed. It's like, and to be reminded that authentic doesn't mean obvious. Authentic can be incredibly surprising. And that's where, and like, as long as you can find really great actors who can deliver it with authenticity, then you're kind of safe to make bolder writing choices, maybe. But you can, that documentaries just sort of, or just observing people make you realize that, I think.
Another question from the floor?
That was a great question. Let's see if we can top it.
Yeah, there's one at the front here.
Hi, how are you? Did you love the movie? Not bad, all right. I'll take it.
Sorry, I'm not good with the mic, I apologize.
That's all right.
One of the things I find interesting is, you kind of create this seesaw emotion between, like, is he in love with the woman, she does, and then he moves on to the next woman, and then she comes back, and I guess I'm not very insightful. I'm trying to really understand where this really goes, in terms of like, the characters, something I'm really, I'm grappling with, because I think a lot of us here think of like, love as being this like immutable thing that exists through all time and space, right? And this is something you very much draw attention to with the initial scenes, and yet it kind of almost invalidates itself. So I'm curious what your comment is to this sort of thing. And the other thing that I also find puzzling is how do they get up to the hotel room, which you wouldn't get into the lift going down, but that's just me being a bit of a stickler.
I think you're in the bathroom for that part.
They did go upstairs because they see William.
Exactly. Boom. It's your first one. Yeah, it's your first one. I don't think. I don't know if there's this sense that love is this immutable, pure, perfect thing. I actually think that's sort of naive in films when films sort of present love like that. And in this film, I think one of the things that I really wanted to explore is the different types of love. Like they have different shapes. Like the love with Sophie or the love with Karen, they're completely different, and yet they're both very valid. And I think that nuance is interesting because it validates one's experience throughout life, as opposed to just sort of discarding past experiences. It's sort of like being comfortable with the complexity of it is, to me, is less naive.
There's a question down the front here, yeah.
Yeah, my name is Sophie, and I wanted to know after the.
Hi, Sophie.
At the closing credit, when you see. Have you thought of the consequences of having, basically knowing what the other person's past life, is, and having people registered? I mean, it's like.
Right.
It seems like it's getting a new meaning to bad karma. Like.
Right. Yeah.
But this was going to be a plot point in the original script.
Right. Yeah. So like definitely. So the original story, for when a baby's born, you know who it was in the past. So it gets scanned in a hospital, and some parents want to know, and some parents don't want to know, and it's a world in which like some very wealthy people leave their fortunes to their future selves. So you can inherit, all this wealth, but you can also inherit all the baggage, and we sort of, some people like who they were in the past, and some people don't, and it uses this sort of idea of reincarnation as a metaphor for our own suppressed past, and I think, like if you look at how the mind is made up, there's the conscious mind, the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind, there are these triggers that are embedded that are these things that can be triggered and dictate our actions that we can't totally control because we're not aware of them. And just like if you're not aware of a past life, that they can be dictating your fears or your desires, and so bringing that to the conscious mind ultimately will give you free will. So that's sort of like thinking on it. So yeah, definitely. Yeah. So that's nice.
There was another question.
Thanks, Sophie.
Just up the back there. Sorry, I'm making life from people do a lot wrong here.
It's like a crisis, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's $1,000 on your chair.
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
$1,000. Awesome script. I totally love the film.
Thanks,
It's one of
man.
those way homers where on the way home you're. Oh wait, but what about? But my question actually is, I'm very curious about how your approach to working with actors, because a lot of those scenes clearly were scripted, but so much of it felt so almost improv that the actors were sometimes talking on top of each other, which was great because it felt so real. Could you talk a little bit about?
Sure. The process of working with the actors. Thanks for your question. I really like rehearsals a lot, and I like when you work with actors who take acting serious as a craft and an art form, and they prepare for their role, which is that they create a backstory from childhood to first bringing that they enter the film. They become all of a sudden invaluable resources to a director. They know their characters way better than you if you've written it, because they know what they did on their 10th birthday, which you might not know. They know what they've done on their 12th birthday. They know the first time they fall in love. They know the first time they broke their leg, and they craft these rich backstories that never show up on screen necessarily, but they influence. They sort of dictate simple behaviors, and so I use that as a resource for me. And through rehearsing, I trust my actors with their suggestions or with their ideas, or like that song that played on the headphones. That Sophie suggested that, for example, or Astrid suggested that. I also call the actors by their name in the movie while we're making the movie, even when we cut. Like Michael was Ian, and Sophie. The other thing, the scene, for example, in the train where Ian finds her again. So that whole scene was scripted. It was, he says something to her, she says something back, and the meaning was all in the subtext, but it was clear what the meaning was. And we were just hanging out in my apartment in Brooklyn, me, Michael, and Ashton, and we set up the chairs as like subway car thing, and everyone was like smoking cigarettes. We were like, I was filming it with like 5D, and we're practicing the scene, and we realized that they could do the whole scene without saying anything, and they could still convey the subtext like precisely. And so we just got rid of all, and practically it made a lot of sense because we wanted to film on a real train as opposed to a train set. And on a real train, you can't control the audio, so we would have to do all those ADR. So we just got rid of the dialogue, and that was a suggestion by Michael in the moment. So I'm very open to if an actor is serious and if they do their homework or they've created this character, I really like to embrace that. And then the other thing is I shoot with 2 cameras simultaneously. We shot with 2 reds, sort of in an L shape. And so blocking wise, there's a lot of freedom. Like we don't have to block it precisely. We can still edit it if we capture something magical that happens in the moment.
Tell me about your connection with Britt Marlin, who's so tremendous in this, and she co-wrote and starred in your first feature, Another Act, as well. How did you get so on?
Britt and I, we went to Georgetown together, school in Washington, D.C., and I was a few years older than her, and we met and we started making short films. We were really good friends in school, and I would direct movies and she would act in them, and alongside our friend Zal Amamish, made some great films as well. We used to
the Sound of My Voice,
The Sound of My Voice in the East. And we were just like a little crew of movie makers with our little digital cameras, and all our short films were together. And so, so we've known each other for a long time. I know, we have that trust for many, many years. And when I wrote this role of Karen, I wrote it for Britt in particular, knowing that she could pull off some more complicated stuff.
There's another question somewhere up here. That's okay.
Hi. How are you doing? Do you guys know what each other's question is?
Yes, actually.
Oh, really?
Why you decided to pick a child to have the same eyes that he was searching for? Because a child obviously is very different to, it's more innocent to trying to find an adult or
It's an age thing though, because
okay.
It's because people don't show up in the database until 10 months after someone has died. So there's no 2 living people that have the same eyes.
There we go. Okay. We did
Easy question.
But I know what you mean. It is. I mean, it creates the way we would talk. I would talk to all my collaborators on the films. If you think about a piano, there's the white notes and the black notes. The white notes feel sort of comfortable when you're playing like a C and E and whatever. It has this sort of feeling you can rest there. The sense of the black notes, the flats or the sharps, you're always sort of like on edge, waiting to land somewhere else. And the movie is comprised of all these black notes that always kind of leave you on edge. If you think about it, they go to get married, but they don't get married. They have to wait 24 hours. It's like it kind of doesn't. It's like annoying, It's like landing on an awkward spot, wanting to land in a comfortable spot. And I was interested in trying to construct a whole story of black notes. And that's just another one of them, which is like there's so much that feels uncomfortable about it, to say the least. And we use that sort of in a way to get him through up the stairs, avoiding the pastor, and to have that experience again. Yes, and your friend. Hi.
Hi, my name's Amara.
Hi, Amara. I'm Mike. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Actually, my question was the kind of element of the pastor. Obviously, throughout the film, there's this thing about rationality, and then when he goes to India and he gets confronted about spirit, the spirituality of things and religious beliefs. I was just wondering how, because it was very awkward in the elevator with the pastor, and it felt like his reality of trying to not to ignore the spiritual reality of life. It was kind of, is that where you were coming from in that
Yeah,
sense?
totally, completely.
So that was the whole point of the pastor, because it was really,
It was kind of out there. It was weird. Yeah, I mean, it was serving a few purposes. Like we, in a way, here's this atheistic sort of character, and he's never actually. You never see him stuck in a confined space with someone who is of great belief, for example. But also, like, if you just think about the practical logistics of making this movie, I needed to put the main character inside a death machine, you know, an elevator, which is like the mechanism of death midway through the film. And I had to do it in a manner that you forget that he's in a death machine, right? So in a way, we sort of have to distract you. And in sort of a manipulative way, but also in service of the story, so that we can have that the test of evidence and the 44%, which is random. And so his science has sort of failed him. But yeah, so basically we needed to get him to establish an elevator, the geography of it, and not have you think about the death of Sophie. It's a huge challenge.
The script very carefully avoids religious consequences. It doesn't work reincarnation.
Right, yeah.
It's never said in the film.
Nope.
So when people say soul, it's kind of the air quotes are that kind of invisible.
Yeah, we avoided as much sort of religious terminology and just kind of spoke about those kind of ideas through science. Hey. Is that a hand? I actually found that.
There are two hands right in the middle. Yeah. Yeah.
I think probably we have time for about 2 more questions.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Martina Till. I really enjoyed your film. It was really nice following that story. I didn't know where it was going, but it was really lovely to see it unfold on screen. It's beautiful. Very poignant moment for me was the lift when Sophie died. The editing there was amazing, crafting was amazing, the sound design was amazing. And I just had echoes of Don't Look Now. And I was wondering about your influences, your cinematic influences, especially editing and aesthetic.
Sure. Well, I can speak to that scene. A couple of influences, or the primary influence for that scene was actually Plato's Symposium, and a speech by Aristophanes. A little book where all these philosophers are sitting around and talking about the nature of soulmates, and everyone's trying to talk about love and what is true love. And Aristophanes is like, I'll tell you what true love is. Humans used to be two-headed beasts, and 4 legs and 4 arms, and we walk around. And Zeus thought we were becoming too profitable or too powerful, and our egos were growing so big. And so Zeus took a thunderbolt and sliced us in half. So that we had 1 head and 2 legs and 2 arms, and then he scattered us all about, and we ran around the earth like trying to find our other half, and that's what soulmates is all about, like trying to find that person who completes you. And then Zeus said, you know, if these single-headed, 2 legs, 2 arms beings, their egos grow and they become powerful again, you know what? I will slice them in half once again. And I was thinking, well, okay, there's a story that's sort of riffing off soulmates, like, and we have to have sort of a memorable death scene. I thought, why not split her in half, literally? That sounds horrible. I'm thinking in poetic terms, but yeah. And so that was the reason we did that. And there's another sort of technique going on in terms of the editing and the compositions, and it's based really on a theory. I wasn't really sure if it was going to work, but I had this theory that deja vu, we experience deja vu because of compositional repetition. So if you find yourself in a situation where the walls are sort of right in the same place and people are sitting in the same positions, or you can get triggered into this feeling that you've experienced it before. And so we took great lengths to make the New York hallway, the position of Sophie's apartment and the elevator, to all be precisely in the same position as the India hallway, India hotel room, and India elevator. And you're not supposed to know that as you're watching it consciously, but hopefully that will trigger a sense of deja vu in terms of the editing, the aesthetic, and the movement of the camera. As they exit the hallway and go to the elevator, it's like something starts to like creep up inside you. What else? And then in terms of sound design, like when he screams, we cut the sound out halfway through. And we mix this at Skywalker in Marin County, which is like the greatest sound design place in the world. And we have all these tools at our disposal to do anything we want. We can make all this weird reverb. And we decided to just cut the sound out based on, which is like the most simple thing to do, on a computer. But the idea was, I was reading about trauma and how we experience trauma, and one of the things that we do is we separate from our senses. We usually have a loss of a sense. One, first of all, being sound. Like if you've ever been in a car accident, often the sound will go out. And so that was just another technique of cinema making. There.
Okay, we have time.
That was a great question. I like that kind of stuff.
We have time for one more. Yeah, just there, then. So, yeah.
Yeah, I thought just want to say the film was tonight, some of the best ones I've seen.
Oh,
this year. It was very unique, it was very innovative and very touching. So it's left me, I don't really quite wanted about it. But there were three things I just wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
And the first is cinematography, and if you use much artificial light, because it looked like it was shot in natural light all the way throughout. The second one, I think, has already been touched on, but I just wanted to know which filmmakers and films have influenced you in your time running up to Another Earth, talking about Raindance. And the third one is religion, the question of religion, and how much controversy this has created, because the actual inception of this film suggests like a kind of super spirituality. Have you had many people or many religious voices coming to you and trying to tackle you on these matters?
These are all really, really great questions. I haven't been tackled by someone yet, but really awesome. But but to start with, thank you for these questions and thank you for your comment. It means a lot to me because we work in isolation. We have no idea, if anyone's going to feel anything. So our cinematographer is this great guy, Marcus Forderer, and I was at Locarno with Another Earth, and I saw a film that Marcus shot, and was like running around the festival trying to find him, because I just felt in sync with him. I felt like every sort of movement, every single slight thing felt rich to me. I loved it. So I found him, and we became fast friends. He's like a magician. Our first meeting, he like made a spoon disappear. And I was like, you're gonna be amazing. You're hired. You can do that all the time. But one of the things we talked a lot about in how we approach cinematography is what are the tropes and what are the opposite of the tropes. So if you think about, for example, a laboratory, we see laboratories in films all the time that are always cold and blue and sterile. And for us, it was Ian's home, the laboratory. So it was like warm, cozy, and inviting, with a lot of luscious yellows and a feeling of sort of like comfort and soothingness to the feeling there. When we talk about the scene where he takes the morphine and is using morphine at home, which is a very dark time for him. The trope is to be bleak, and yet we lit it very romantically. It had almost like a shimmer to it that's totally the opposite of what one might approach that with. We also, certain techniques, as I was saying, deja vu, compositional deja vu. We also have a double vertigo shot, which is a dolly zoom out in, a 180 around, and dolly zoom out when he sees the billboard. And we talk about how do you earn a shot like that, and how do you get to that place and like slowly ramp up to it. So there was he was just an amazing collaborator in cinematography, and every single, even the sort of nonchalant things are purposeful. We went over everything meticulously. So I'm glad you appreciate cinematography. he just shot, and this is his second film, and he just shot Roland Emmerich's most recent film. Roland wants him to shoot like a $200 million film next. And he's a very talented young guy. The second question was influences. I really love this director, Krzysztof Kieslowski, who made Red, White, and Blue, and The Decalogue, and Double Life of Veronique. Passed away too young. He tackled the ideas of the metaphysical. You know, he was so poetic and efficient in capturing the otherworldly through mundane objects. And I thought I think that's marvelous. I'm like completely obsessed with that. This is sort of like a poor man's version of it. You know, like it's someone I really admire. I also really admire Kubrick. I think he technologically and precision-wise was always pushing boundaries. I like Julian Sowell's movies. I like Die Hard was the first rated R movie I saw. That was a really great movie. I love The Big Lebowski. That's like my favorite movie. I like a lot of movies that are movies I would never make. And then sort of religious reactions. There hasn't been sort of, I mean, it's such a small movie. It's not like the Da Vinci Code where we got like so many people coming in, like, meaning like, not many people have seen this movie. It's like a small movie. So I invite backlash or like religious controversy or whatever, and we're going to see it. But the truth is that, you know, I think I feel the scene with the worms, where Sophie comes in and uses Ian's research. That's a real thing. Scientists have modified worms that have two senses. They've modified them to have vision. That's a real experiment that takes place now. And when I heard about that, it was something. It felt very profound to me. It seemed, and this is why I love Sophie and Ash's performance. She says, in a way, since we've invented telescopes, and still have what we are allowed to teach in schools, especially in the States. Not much of an issue here in England, but anyways, I don't think they necessarily have to be at opposition. And the way she speaks about it, she says, you know, like we are the worms, the metaphysical. Like we have 5 senses, and we have tools that can read other things like gamma rays and infrared, but still things that are detectable. But then there's a domain that is just, you can understand it, Mr. Scientist. You can understand that there is a metaphysical land that's beyond tables and chairs, that's untouchable. And just like light on a worm, you know, one worm can't say to the other, like, you see that light? And I'm like, what's that? Like they don't have the language to articulate it, you know? No matter how hard they try. It's like, it's kind of like, it smells nice, but it's light, you know? And yet that light does warm up an apple every day at noon. And the worm's like indirectly experiencing that other domain's influence on its world. And so in a way, that's how the spiritual world, if there was such a thing, lose the terminology, put a different term there, might interact with our world. There's another great book called Flatlands by Edwin Abbott. It's a math book, and it's about a square meets a sphere. And it's all about that. Recommended reading. Thanks for your question.
Yeah, I think we really are out of time now, but thank you so much, Mike.
Oh, that's it? That's all.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.